Okay, are we on now, Marco? Okay, we're ready to go. Members of the board, of course, we're trying something for the first time today, so I think we all patiently can get through this. And members of the community that are going to view this meeting as well, uh, this is a little bit of an exercise for the ITE department, but I'm sure that we're going to do. I think we'll do well with it. So let's call the meeting to order, and let's recite the pledge. And I will start it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Here.
Mrs. Alcha?
Here.
Mr. Lindemann?
Here.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bahrain?
Here. Item D, approval of minutes, members of the board, the minutes of April the 28th, 2020, the special meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve. This is Lindemann.
Second
by Ramos.
By Lindemann. Is there a second?
Mr. Ramos.
Mr. Ramos, thank you. Any discussion regarding the minutes, members of the board? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Ms. Alcha? Ms. Alcha, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez? He's on. Mr. Gomez, Dr. Gomez, you're muted. Mr. Bahrain?
Yes. And hopefully we can get Dr. Gomez on as soon as possible. I'm sure you're working on that, right, Alma?
Yeah, he's on there.
Okay. Item E, summary of current events, Ms. Samaniego.
Okay, he's on.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. President and governing board members. And I'd want to take this opportunity and welcome Ms. Jana Selchow as our new board member, and Mr. Ray Bahrain continuing a new term as a board member and as president. Just a couple things for our current events is our distance learning is continuing, as you all know, and I'll give further information on that. We have the spelling bee will take place January the 20th at 5 p.m. and it'll be a live spelling bee with students reporting in person, but we are taking extra precautions, and Ms. Nicole Mariscal is directing that task and ensuring that the students will be safe as we will all follow the protocols, and parents will not be allowed in. We will be streaming live as well so that parents can be at home watching their students do the spelling bee. So again, that'll take place on the 20th of January. And we are also starting on quarter 3 of school, and parent conferences are going to be taking place very soon. And that's all I have.
Okay, just a quick comment, and I think I mentioned it last time when you mentioned that Mrs. Mariscal was coaching. Is she going to be remunerated for that?
We have not. We did. I remember you did mention it, but that is one position that is not listed as an extra duty per se, but we are going to be looking at that. And that is it's a once a year event, but I know she puts in a lot of hours. So Cesar and I and Denise are going to be looking at that.
Well, she's gracefully volunteered to do that, I think, for the past few years, and there is a lot of time involved there, and it is a coaching position, and I think, and I believe the members of the board will agree with me that we should look at some type of stipend for her for doing that. Number 2, governing board members, any reports? Ex officio student member, Garrick, do you have anything to share with the board? Is Garrick on there?
Hi, yes.
Oh, great. Okay.
Good
You have
evening.
go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Samaniego, staff, and members of the community. On January 7th, DHS students began their second semester and fourth trimester. This month, student council members will be attending a virtual state conference on January 29th and 30th. HOSA has begun their online state competition testing, and students are currently being asked to submit their own portraits for the yearbook this year. That is all I have to report. Thank you.
Okay, very good, and thank you for that, and thank you for being on tonight, Garrick. Number 2, business office reports, Mr. Soto.
Good evening, Mr. President. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, it's my balance report, my monthly balance report that you have in front of you. One thing I want to point out is that the current budget that you're looking at, it's still the one we presented for the revision last month, I believe. I haven't, as all of you know already, the state cut us again now because of the 95% funding because of the district being online or hybrid. So next month, you're going to see an updated budget report. Before I continue with the report and talking about the finances in state, do you have any questions on that specific report?
Yeah, I do. Would you brief the board on what the governor said yesterday? Because there's been a lot of confusion and an aftermath of misunderstandings about that comment he made, and then his PIO had to come on later and try to explain what she thought he said, and that's regarding he's not going to fund empty seats. You want to clarify that, because that's going to be very important to us.
Yes, sir. Like you said, it's confusing, as it is confusing for all of the districts at this point too. We don't know what he meant was cutting schools right away or for next school year. We haven't heard anything from Department of Education about that. As you know, all of the districts that are on some kind of online or hybrid model right now are being cut 5% on their current allocations from MNO. And that's for our district was $1.1 million that we have to reduce our budget because of that. And thanks to the state, of course, we got an email right the day before the break with, I guess it's like a nice Christmas surprise from them. But and also, if you remember, we had to cut for the revision, the budget revision, we had to cut another $1 million because of enrollment, because of the decrease in enrollment. So far, we have experienced a big amount of reduction in budget. Going back to what the governor was saying or said yesterday, it's still uncertain for the whole state, for all of the school districts in the state. If I recall correctly, there's only 2 or 3 school districts in the whole state that are traditional at this point. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of concerns and letters and things to the governor about it. One of the things that I don't believe it's fair is that, yeah, I see his point and I understand where he's coming from, but I can guarantee you that, I mean, most of the teachers are doing an excellent job trying to keep up with the curriculum stuff. It's hard because not all of the kids have internet and you name it. But I don't think that he's realizing the efforts that all of the districts, all of the teachers and classified staff in the school districts are doing to make sure that the kids are getting the best education possible at this with all of these issues going on. But I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly financially how is it going to affect us, because he hasn't come out and say how much or what percentage or when or anything. So it's a matter of waiting at this point.
The issue for us would be that if he were talking about this year, and we look at membership for next year's budget, it would not only affect us this year because of the, and I'm asking you, I'm not making a statement. This is a question that if it were to take effect this year, and I think what he was alluding to was if districts don't go back to a hybrid or a traditional way, if those seats are empty, and by virtue of us still being online, and that's where the confusion comes in, then we not only lose the finances this year, but it could also affect next year because of the membership. So I want to make sure, Mr. Soto, that the board thoroughly understands that, especially you've already started or you're getting ready to do the budget, right? You're working into the budget now for next year.
Yes, definitely. Again, it's a matter of waiting because I don't know how much we're talking about. It is a big concern. Yes, it is, because what he's not realizing at this point is, those seats might be empty, but we're still doing instruction. We're still paying our teachers. We're still paying our classified staff. And again, those budgets are 85 to 90% salaries and benefits. So I don't know where he's coming from with all those empty seats. There's got to be a lot of clarification on that point. But yes, it is very concerning from this point forward and for next school year, for sure. As you know, too, we are on a hire freeze. We are only replacing positions that are essential, that we actually need at this point. And we're going to continue that way until the end of the school year to make sure that we have enough carryover for next year. Another point is that the federal government already approved the stimulus package, and it's gonna, all of the school districts are gonna get more CARES money, and not sure if they're gonna do the stabilization grant again on the state level. But to me, it's just a wash. They're just cutting us on one side, but giving us money on the other side. So it's just playing with numbers, and it's very frustrating because we do have to play with those numbers and complement the cut on the M&O budget on the M&O side. So not until I know for sure how much we're going to get on those CARES money, and with those stabilization grants, if that happens again, I wouldn't be able to give you an exact financial position of the district at this point. But what I can tell you is that because of those grants, we were able to make those cuts that we did with the loss in enrollment and with the 5% cut from the state on the M&L side. So I have to move a lot of expenditures to the CARES monies. Out of the $1.8 million we had for CARES money that we were awarded this year, there's $500,000 left, which is still a good cushion, but again, I don't know how long we're going to be able to sustain that amount or to keep it.
Okay, just quickly, you mentioned grants, and we were going to move right into that before we get to Mr. Ramos. He has his hand up. Just quickly, the traditional federal grants, how do those look?
How do those work?
How do they look?
Oh, how do they look? Sorry. Right now, we're in the process of getting all of those completed. The only one still pending is Title I, but I know Ms. Cox and Mrs. Trevino are working on those. There's some amendments that need to be done and resubmitted for the state to be approved.
Are we meeting the guidelines? Are we meeting the deadlines and everything on those grants?
Yes, the deadlines are met. Yeah, I mean, as long as we submit, it's a matter of them reviewing, and I'm talking about the state. At the state level, they're reviewing and sending us back with questions and changes that we need to make. But the deadlines have been met, yes.
Okay, Mr. Ramos.
Yes, I have a concern over the issue that so much funding is going to be cut. Even though it may be a wash, it's still a lot of work. But my concern is if we're forced to go into the hybrid and we start losing students again, Cesar, will this, could you see a big drop in student enrollment or will it be the same? I don't know if you can answer that or Ana, but whatever your opinion.
Let me try to answer that, Cesar. Mr. Ramos, are you asking about whether if we were to start hybrid this school year, would that affect our enrollment further by having kids withdraw? Or are you talking for next school year?
I'm talking if we're forced to start this year or even next year.
Mhm.
But the issue I have is this year, being forced to starting going into the hybrid, will that affect us if we get students dropping out again?
Okay. Well, currently this year, what we have at hand and what we've been working with are, the current executive orders that we have in hand. What the Governor Doug Ducey did yesterday was mention that it's time to get back, get our kids back in school. He mentioned, summer school, longer days, one-on-one targeted instruction, and definitely no funding for empty seats. All of those are, kind of left us with a lot of questions that we don't have answers for because we don't know exactly what he means. But what I can tell you right now is that currently the executive order that supports us and allows us to continue operating the way we have specifically say every school district had the opportunity to remain online if they chose to. We at DUSD gave those options to all of our parents, right? If we were to ever get approved to start hybrid. So if, let's say, I'm just going to use potentially and hypothetically speaking, that let's say March, we were able to do the last quarter hybrid, all of our parents are still going to have the option to keep their kids online because that's what the executive orders we have currently right now that were approved and given by the governor allows us to do that. So I don't foresee us losing more students because we're offering the hybrid program because parents are still going to have the option of keeping kids online. My concern is more for next school year. Right now, we have very little information to even start planning, but we need to start planning and looking forward into potentially a traditional year or an online option or also a hybrid, but we don't have the facts and what those guidance are going to be. I foresee, just based on what he said, is that they want us to open up our schools traditionally, like we normally would, starting in August, and whether that means longer school days, summer school, and obviously this has impacted academically all of our children, and we knew that. And this governing board made the decision that, at this point, we needed to take care of our health, the students' health first and foremost. And as we were going to continue doing the best that teachers could under a distance learning model. So I don't foresee us, going back to that, I don't foresee us dropping a lot more kids just because we're offering the hybrid model, because that option of staying online is still going to be there.
Thank you.
Okay, and you'll get more into that during your report, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Let's move right to the human resource. Oh, Dr. Gomez, I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's muted, Dr. Gomez.
Oh, did he have a question?
Yeah, he's muted.
I don't think he knows it, does he?
Dr. Gomez, you're muted. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so new at this, and I was the one that wanted the meetings this way. My point is this: that I think, the ASBA came out with some thoughts, and the governor has his thoughts and everything like that. But I would suggest, and I think the board would agree, that we have to, as a board, think what's best for DUSD. We do what we have to do, and whether it's hybrid, whether it's online or whatever, we have to do what's best for Douglas. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Members of the board, let's move on to Mrs. Cox, Human Resources and Attendance Report.
Good evening, everyone. So we currently have 4 employees that will be retiring, and we would like to recognize them and thank them for their years of service. Maria Chavez for 16 years, Martina Peralta 22 years, Elsa Villaña 30 years, and Mr. Salchow, who will be resigning or retiring from his golf coach position. So we would like to thank them for their dedication and service to the district.
That's very good.
I'd like to give you an update on COVID, where we currently stand. So we were preparing for the worst after the holiday break, because after Thanksgiving, we were hit really hard here in the district. But it's not been as bad, and as bad things, are very serious, but not as bad as we were thinking they were going to be. And November was really a tough month. So we currently have 13 employees out due to COVID at different sites. And then we have a few that are still pending results. Vaccinations, in terms of vaccinations, Mrs. Samaniego will speak about that in a little bit, but she did register the district. But we have not heard anything from the health department as to when they're going to be providing those vaccinations, which is true throughout the state. So we will share updates with the employees as we get them. Right now, I know that they're registering for 75-year-old and older, maybe health employees also, and that would be, I think it's January 23rd. So they can go to the website, to the Arizona Health Department website, and register there. And currently our enrollment is at 3,843. We are still seeing some students who are dropping or that they're transferring out, but we are also seeing some students enroll. And we have also started the annual registration.
Regarding the COVID and the vaccination, I think it's very important because the staff, our entire staff, especially our teachers, it's vital to them. I think that we really need to stay on top of that, and that I understand that the whole thing is totally discombobulated as far as the procedure and the routine that they're using for disbursement. And if we're in line as an organization, does that mean that, so that our teachers know, especially, does that mean that they're going to take the group all in one distribution, and is the district going to make the appointment for them, or do they individually have to make the appointment? I think that those are questions that are being asked that I think we need to answer if we can.
Okay, so right now I know that that each individual will have to register themselves. I believe that that's true, Mrs. Samaniego, because they do ask some questions that each individual will have to fill out their own questionnaire. In terms of how the rollout is going to happen or when, I have gotten no direction on that. I don't know if Mrs. Samaniego has more information that I'm sure she'll share with us, but I think she registered the district, Douglas Unified School District, but we cannot register employees. They will have to do that themselves.
Yeah, but my question is, we understand that because of all of the pertinent information, the personal information, but as they did with the firefighters and they did with the healthcare people, they designated a place and they did them all at the same time. Is that going to happen here, or are they going to have to go through the phase and register individually, and because by virtue of being a teacher they say I'm in the next phase, or are we going to get them all together, I hope, and be able to do them all at one time?
Mr. Bahrain, if I may, I have more information on that, and I was going to provide that during my during the action item on distance learning and COVID.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
Then if there's nothing else on that, members of the board, I'm going to ask you to move item 3L, discussion update on distance learning and other school-related activities and COVID-19, to be the first item on the agenda after we have the call to the public, because I think, in all fairness to a lot of our viewers and our staff, that's probably the most important item to them during these times, and we don't need to have them sit through the whole agenda to wait for that. And we get into some discussion on some of these other items. So, Mrs. Samaniego, if you'll get ready to do that, we're going to move that to one. It's going to be under the first item. And then, Alma, do you have anybody who wants to address the board? Okay, so then we'll do that now then, Ms. Samaniego. If we'll go to the discussion update on distance learning and COVID.
Definitely. All right, so there's a few points that I want to discuss, and first and foremost is information and an update on our distance learning plan. Currently, all of our students at DUSD remain fully 100% online. Monday through Friday, they are attending school 5 days a week, with Wednesday being that asynchronous day where teachers use that day to have office hours, grading, meetings, and assignments that are left on Wednesdays are to be done by the students. They take attendance and they do assignments on their own. So that is the only day right now that they are not meeting with their teachers. That was a change that we made. I believe it was second quarter when we took input from all of our teachers and students and parents, and we heard loud and clear that instruction was needed on a more consistent basis other than the 2 days a week that they were meeting virtually with them. So taking that into consideration, we made that change. So 5 days a week, school is happening, students are having to report, and attendance is being taken. All of our learning spaces are currently open, and in the past, in the first part of the semester, we were seeing high numbers of students reporting to our safe learning spaces, with Joe Carlson being up to about 82 students, 83. Some schools had 54. Douglas High School had about 60 some students. And so our numbers were high. And that was for obvious reasons. Our parents needed a place to send their kids for support. It was either due to lack of internet at home or lack of devices. And so that provided a safe learning space for students. Again, the safe learning spaces do not mean that our students are being instructed physically in the teachers' classrooms. However, something that we've seen in the recent weeks as a positive change is that some teachers, not mandatory, but teachers are encouraged to do some type of pull-in of students into their classroom in groups of 2 or 3 if the students are attending the learning spaces. So some teachers are doing that. They are bringing some kids into the classroom while they're teaching online to the students in the classroom and the students at home. And so teachers are managing that and really have seen a positive, I've heard a lot of positive remarks, because teachers really miss students in their classrooms. Now, the kids are not in there for an entire day. They may go in for an hour, let's say for the reading lesson, and that teacher makes that one-on-one support there, and then they go back into the learning spaces. And so all of our learning spaces, again, are open. However, I think a lot of the parents, with some of the times that we've had to close down a learning space because there's been an outbreak at that school site, or we haven't had sufficient staff to run the learning space, then we have had to notify parents that the learning space was temporarily closed. So the numbers have decreased, but it is only the first week of school back. And so we potentially will see an increase of more of those students returning to the learning spaces and continuing, that support on site. So what we're going to do from this point forward, if a safe learning space has to close because of an outbreak or because of lack of staff running to support it, we are going to offer an alternative location for that school. What that means is that maybe Stevenson students will have to go to Joe Carlson to attend a safe learning space. And if you recall, the safe learning space is a mandate from the governor. and we have to remain open and offer those spaces for our families so that the children can attend. So we will not close down a learning space. We're just going to relocate and offer that to the parents. It doesn't mean that we're going to transport them to another school, but we will notify parents that a school site has to be closed and students can attend at an alternative space. What affects Douglas Safe Learning Spaces is that we are not a big city or a big town that has alternative resources that we can partner with. For example, Phoenix and Tucson, they partner up with the Boys and Girls Club, with local churches, local organizations where they have facilities where if the school is closed, then the district employees can go over to another learning site at a Boys and Girls Club or somewhere else and help run that learning space. And so we don't have that here. We are it, our schools are it. And so we do have to try to keep those open as best as we can, as long as we have the staffing available. Some of the challenges, obviously, that come with distance learning is the student engagement. And students being actively engaged means that they are attending their classes virtually, that they are turning on their cameras, that they are actively participating, that they are turning in assignments. And so some of the issues that we saw, that a lot of the students were being marked absent for not doing, either not showing up to class or showing up to class late, or simply only turning in assignments. And so we changed a little bit on the expectations because if you look at the requirements and what ADE was allowing us to do in the executive order, was that as long as a student attended, showed that they were there, a parent email, or that students were submitting assignments, we were supposed to count them as present. And so we are strongly encouraging students to obviously turn on the cameras, because it's important for the teachers to have that visual contact with the kids. And I'm sure some kids, right, Garrick, don't like to turn on their camera, especially if it's, early in the morning and you guys just rolled out of bed. And so I know that teachers struggle with that, with kids still not wanting to turn on their camera. And roughly about, I would say most of the schools have about an 86%, 88% participation rate. At least that's what it was in December. And what is unique about this is that normally the students that we normally struggle with on a regular traditional academic year are pretty much the same students that are struggling in this distance learning year. And so that has really not changed. Obviously, we don't have much discipline to deal with. Principals aren't dealing with referrals. We're not dealing with long-term hearings. And so that has been a real positive thing, because we, when I met with my staff at the beginning of the year, I said, we are not going to be suspending kids when they're not even able to be in school. And so we're going to do whatever we can. If, students are goofing off in a virtual classroom or doing things that are considered inappropriate, then, you will deal with it as you normally would as a teacher. And so that has been a positive thing for us, that definitely decreasing the number of disciplinary actions. And kids have been suspended, believe it or not, from virtual classes for a day or two. But that doesn't mean that the work was not that was not required of them. It was just, kids will be kids and they will do something that they shouldn't have done. So they were banned from, that virtual teaching day for a day or so. So that's what's going on. Moving forward, we are in, like I said, quarter 3, and quarter 3 is going to end pretty quick. Before you know it, we'll be getting ready for AZM2, and we will be testing this year during distance learning. And distance learning with the Arizona Merit Test, AIMS test, the AZM2 is a requirement that it has to be done on site. And so that's going to be a challenge for us. We are going to have to schedule students to come into our schools and physically take the test on site. We can't just say, okay, we're going to open up AZM2, testing window starts now, and you all can take it at home. That's not going to be happening. And getting 100% of our students to show up to test is going to be a real challenge. And that is a challenge that I have been discussing with other superintendents, and they simply don't know how that's going to happen. We are fully online and probably will be online during that testing time. And so that's going to be a big challenge for us. With that comes a Zala testing as well. A Zala test, and anybody that is considered an ELD student or is new to our district needs to get that Zala test done. So a Zala test is on its way, and Mrs. Trevino is working with our school principals and planning that. So that's also another test that students have to schedule to come into our sites to take the test. They cannot take it at home. So that we're going to give it a trial and error run with a Zala testing and see how that works. Mrs. Trevino is going to be collaborating obviously with Mr. Durazo and IT, because that's going to take some technology device setup, infrastructure for our Wi-Fi band, and where are we going to test a great number of kids and how are we going to schedule them. So that's also going to be taking place rather soon. As we plan for Q3 and look at what potentially could take place in Q4, whether we will be allowed to start hybrid or whether we will remain, we have our reopening of school task forces at the elementary level, middle school, and high school. And so we will continue our meetings with our committees so that they can get input from our staff at the school sites. And I propose that by our March meeting that I come to you with a recommendation, our February meeting, during February, that I come to you with a recommendation and more information as to what potentially our last quarter of the school year could look like. And then you all can take a vote, make a decision whether we finish off the school year online or whether we attempt to do 1 quarter of hybrid. And so that will be happening in February. I will tell you right now that Douglas High School is the only school that right now I can tell you my recommendation would be that they remain online for the rest of the school year. And the only reason I'm saying Douglas High School is because their master schedule is very complicated. And we've had to make many changes to that master schedule from the initial start of the school year to now. We started with 2 days a week virtual instruction. So kids met with a teacher 2 days a week, 3 days a week they had asynchronous learning. And then we needed more days a week. So there was 4 days of virtual instruction added. That created some changes in kids' schedules, and DHS admin, along with her counseling staff, collaborates with New Student Center, who then has to make sure on the Power School end of things and on our system, everything is aligning right. Because the moment you make a change, it creates many errors on the state side. And so our systems are communicating from the moment you make a change, it communicates it. So our New Student Center staff, or Mene and her staff, are really working and trying to fix any change that takes place at DHS. So in order to cause a lot of errors on Power School side and changes, if we were to start hybrid for Douglas High School, that means we would have to change kids to meet virtually with the teacher only twice a week as opposed to 4 times a week. So then that creates moving student schedules again and creating a lot more problems for DHS schedule and for New Student Center. And so that is the only one school that I feel, because it's such a complex master schedule to deal with and to handle, that would probably be the only school that, if with my recommendation, that would stay online for the rest of the year. But We will bring that to you in the February meeting, and then you all can make a decision. And that way, all of our teachers and all of our students and the parents know how we are going to end the school year. Currently, Mr. Soto talked about loss in funding, and we continue to see kids being withdrawn. Mrs. Cox mentioned that our enrollment is 3,843 students, but it's for ADM purposes, which is our full funding. I think our numbers are at like 3,600 and some, Mr. Soto. So that is really what our budget is based on because of the number of kids we lost. So as we continue to lose some, we also continue to gain some. Kids, parents are enrolling their children, 1 or 2 a week. We will start, as Denise said, we are starting our annual registration process. That is for the upcoming school year. And I am hoping that we are given enough guidance in a very timely manner from ADE and the legislature and our governor's office about potentially what could happen next year. Because as we're registering students, I think a lot of the questions are going to come from parents. We're registering our kids for next year, but what does next year look like? Is it a traditional year? Is it a hybrid? Is it, are we going to have that online option? Because we all know that this vaccine is out, but not everybody's going to take it. So COVID is here. It's going to be here for quite a bit. It's not going away. And so what guidance AD is going to give us at this point, we don't have those answers. I will tell you that every superintendent in my meeting today asked the same question that Mr. Barain asked. What did Governor Ducey mean by, no funding for empty seats? What did he mean by longer school days? What did he mean by this and that? And so I am sure that ASBA and ASA and AD are going to be providing more information as they themselves are pondering with trying to make sense of it all. The fact that we stayed online this year, we knew we were going to lose 5%. We were only going to be funded at 95% because we had on some type of a distance learning platform, whether that was hybrid or fully 100% online, we were going to lose 5%. The only way we were going to be funded at 100% is if DUSD had a traditional school year with no online instruction whatsoever. And we couldn't do that. We simply couldn't do that. It was not feasible. That would have been a very bad decision on DUSD. And so, as Mr. Soto said, next month, he will make that budget revision because school finance knew of this, and we were told of this back in July that we were going to lose 5% funding. But school finance from ADE notified us the Thursday or the Friday right before Christmas break. I believe it was like at 3 or 4 o'clock that we were notified, oh, by the way, you have to adjust your budget because you are now we're taking away the 5% that we said we were back in July. And so what that has caused for DUSD, along with the first budget revision that Mr. Soto presented and you all approved, is about a $2.2 or $2.3 million budget adjustment based on just this school year. And that's just as of what we have as of now. What that means and how it can impact us is still to be determined. We know that things are going to be challenging next year, and DUSD has kept everybody employed. We've paid every single employee when school closures have happened, when we've had to send people home, closed school campuses for COVID-19 reasons. And so we've really tried to make our staff a priority. But by the end of January, we're going to be, by the February meeting, we will be presenting something that could potentially be some positions that we may have to either reduce hours If we're going to stay online for the rest of the school year, we may need to cut down, for example, some of our food service facilities that we are providing meals at. Right now, every school site is providing and serving meals. So all the staff is being employed for the regular hours that we were hired to do so. But what's happening right now, even in food service, who is a self-sufficient department, they really financially, food service has always been a department that really operates itself with the funding that the revenues that are being provided by our food service and our meals. What's happening right now is that food service, obviously, if there's a loss in students with a distance learning plan, obviously we have tremendously reduced the number of meals that we are providing. So our revenues are much, much less, but our employees are still the same number of employees that we're paying. And so Mr. Soto, Mr. Pineda, and I have had, very good conversations and serious conversations about what potentially we can propose as some changes in February to allow for food service to be able to finish off the school year without being too much in the red. By around December, I think as of the last week of December when we went out on break, food service had red numbers. They were in the red about $130,000. And what that means is that M&O will have to cover that deficit if food service keeps, if we keep decreasing our meals. And so I really strongly encourage all of our staff that has kids in the district, all of our parents that have their kids in the district to go pick up their meals, because basically that is what we need. We need our numbers to increase and our families to pick up their meals. We are serving, I think on the 4th, we started serving about 700 meals, but we were serving about 1,000 or, a little over 1,000. And so all of this adds up. And Mr. Pineda did make a proposal to me. So what we've done to help food service is now we have added 3 bus routes, which are now delivering food to different areas of Douglas. We currently had 2 bus routes that were delivering food to, I believe, the Bay Acres area and over in the Porterville side and the surrounding areas. But now we are covering pretty much all areas where our schools are at, and food is being delivered to those multiple areas to see, so that our families who are not picking up meals, they see a bus parked and are picking up meals. And so that's one change that we're doing. And a potential change that may come about is that we reduce the number of sites that we are providing our meals at, because if we really stay online, we can designate, let's say, Stevenson, Douglas High School, and Sarah Marley as the 3 sites, and then Ferris over in Porterville as the sites that any students can go pick up their meals. And that could potentially be something that, we propose. But further discussion is going to take place so that we can be prepared and know how our DUSD and our M&O budget will assist in these very difficult times. And DUSD, I will tell you that DUSD is not the only one. Sierra Vista just made the decision, I believe yesterday during their governing board meeting, because their deficit for food service is even worse than us. And they have made an immediate change, like starting next week. And there's furloughs, they're laying off people, reducing number of positions. And so we are trying to avoid letting go of employees as much as we can, but we know that next year is going to pose some challenges financially for us, and we are trying to do everything we can to survive with the stabilization grant and the CARES Act money, and by not filling some of these positions that we have. So that's on funding. Are there any questions before I go on?
let's, first of all, let me quickly make a comment about the food service. That is extremely concerning and unheard of that you have problems with funding in food service. And you don't want to let it get to a point where you have to take those extreme measures. So it's good you're on top of that. The other thing about, just quickly about Governor Ducey and his State of the State, you always have to remember that those were prepared remarks. And he wouldn't have made a comment like that if he hadn't seen something forthcoming. And always remember that those people are in constant contact with the chairs of the Senate and House Education Committees. So that transposes into communication with the legislature. So I don't think that he would unilaterally make a comment like that, not knowing that he would be supported in the legislature. So the reason I say that is that we have to be very, very vigilant and think that it could become a reality. Members of the board, any comments on that portion of her report? Mr. Lindeman, any comments?
Ms. Salcha has a comment.
Who does?
Ms. Salcha.
Okay,
I
go
have
ahead.
a question for Anna.
Excuse
regarding
me, you know, she wasn't even on my screen. I didn't see her the whole time. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jana, you weren't even on my screen. Go ahead.
Sorry. My question is that regarding our food service, are the schools contacting these families and letting them know that it's still there? I was told that there was a little misunderstanding or miscommunication about whether or not a certain school was receiving their food, and they were, but word to the community or word amongst maybe the parents in the school was they thought that it had stopped at some point. And so that's, I would want to know that the schools are contacting these families, even in a, when we send out the phone messages to everyone.
Okay. And what I can answer, what I can tell you, Mrs. Selchow, is that probably the confusion happened, and this is when we were forced to close down food service. And at one point, we were forced to close down food service because there was an outbreak within the staff. And anytime that we had to close a site or a department, it was with the guidance of the health department and actually their direction. And so when we closed that, then we had to stop feeding for 2 weeks. And so what that does is that while we have to close for 2 weeks, we had to stop feeding, we had to stop taking revenue, but we still had to continue paying our staff. So that's where the confusion may have been. But anytime that we've reinstated and reopened and we're ready to roll and we're operating, we communicate via our website, the school's Facebook page. There is, a power link, but I will not tell you that that every school is contacting like individuals, families. They may do it like in a blast, as you say, in the power link, power announcement. But I will make sure, because I think our schools need to start promoting it. And, Mr. Soto and Mr. Pineda, and when I meet with my leadership team, we were brainstorming things of how we can promote, because I think a lot of parents let's say they don't have a car, or they simply don't want to leave their homes, or they're working and there's nobody that can go pick up the meal. And the beauty of this is that if students are a DUSD student, all the parents have to do, or the kids or the families or a neighbor, just have to take, if they don't have the ID, but have to take the name and the student ID number. If they don't know the student ID number, at least the name in school, and we'll locate them in Power School. If they are a non-DUSD student and go to any other school, they also can be fed by DUSD, because that is how the program that we are running is allowing us to do. So I will make sure
Thank you.
Mr. Lindeman,
communication goes out.
any other questions, members of the board? Okay, now you had another part of that agenda was other related activities. Go ahead.
So the last part of my report is obviously on the section of COVID. And like Mrs. Cox said, we are our HR department, and I want to congratulate Denise and her staff, because they have been on top of every single case reported and not reported, and contact tracing. And they put in a lot of hours, and I will say that they put in a lot of hours even on the weekends, because people get sick on the weekends, and the expectation is that staff reports. And so, thank you to our HR department. So moving forward, I do have information on what Mr. Bahrain was asking. I had a meeting today, and as I informed all of our staff and governing board, I have officially registered DUSD as an organization. And the same questions that Mr. Bahrain had are the same questions that every superintendent has right now and every governing board in Cochise County. It's a little frustrating because we were not given all the answers that we need, as far as, are we going to be called as an organization? Are they going to select a site and tell us, okay, DUSD, you guys get tested on Thursday, Friday, Saturday at the old Kmart building, and so forth. But what I can tell you is this, and I will be sending out communication tomorrow morning. Every employee and all of you as governing board members who wish to take the vaccine can do so by pre-registering themselves. And that can be done starting, as soon as I send out that communication tomorrow. Every staff will have to do this individually, and you will be able to go up to step 5, because there are 5 steps in the pre-registration process as an individual person who wants to get the COVID vaccine. And the only reason you will not be able to go further is because after the 5th step, that's where you register for a site or a location of where you are signing up to get the vaccine. But everything that before that, you will be asked, I'm sure, your name, Social Security, whether you have insurance or not. And if you don't, it's, they're not charging, and any health information that you have. Now, we were told today, Cochise County plans on starting phase 1B as of January the 23rd. That's their plan. They didn't guarantee today that that's when they would start officially, okay? But that's potentially what they're looking at as a date for anybody that's in the education field, or anybody that qualifies under the 1B group, along with any health workers that are still remaining that have not gotten their vaccine, and anybody that's also 70 or older, I believe. Once January 23rd rolls around, then employees can then go back with your username and password, because once you do the pre-registration, every person will be given a username and password. You will then be able to go back into that website and then find a testing facility, a vaccine facility. And right now, the organizations that will be testing are Chiricahua and Copper Queen Health Associates. But the problem that we were told today is, and I'm sure you've heard it or you've read it somewhere, Cochise County is receiving 500 vaccines per week per county. Okay, only 500 vaccines per week per county. So county health department is really struggling and in how they're going to manage and how that rollout is going to take place. So I asked the question today. I have not received an email stating, we've received your verification of registration. DUSD will be called upon on this date. And they said, we are not doing that. The registration as an organization was only for the mere reason and sole reason so that they could plan on how many vaccines potentially Cochise County would need. Okay. So it was more for planning purposes, not so much, okay, Mrs. Samaniego, DUSD will go on this date. So as of tomorrow, I will give, step-by-step sort of instructions as to what website, what's the link, what registration, and then give information as to the date that you can all go in after you've done your pre-registration to select a testing or a vaccine site within Cochise County. And I will say that, for example, Benson will already have a vaccine site in the upcoming through Chiricahua, and they've been given like 200 vaccines already. Another school district or another organization mentioned another 100. So then one of the doctors that's in our committee obviously talked about the complexity and how frustrating that by giving us only 500 per county, and let's say one area of that county will already receive, let's say 200 vaccine. What does that do to the rural school districts or the rural areas where 200 of those 500 are already being taken and 100 of those 500 are already being taken? So I will tell you that organization, which is Cochise County Health Department, is really struggling in how they are going to do the rollout. So to answer your question and to make sure everybody understands, there is, as of today, there is no information stating that they will send us information saying, okay, DUSD, you're ready to get your vaccine as long as you've done your pre-registration. So what they highly, highly advised is that employees who are part of DUSD, since I've already done the pre-registration, start to pre-register immediately. That way they get that information, and when they have the facility or where the vaccine is going to be given, then we complete that fifth step and register for that one situation and one site. So I'm going to include all this in our communication.
Okay.
The vaccine is not mandatory at this juncture, but knowing that 500 vaccines are going to be given by to each county per week, and knowing that there's a lot of people that want it, we really encourage those that really want to take the vaccine, and we think it's highly recommended because we want our schools to reopen and our kids and our staff to be safe, to do that pre-registration process. And so that will be available as of tomorrow.
Okay, but the bottom line is, and the bad news is, after all of that, everybody's on their own. That's what it amounts to. Everybody's on their own. Okay, members of the board, do you have any questions or comments regarding any of those two? Now, Ms. Samaniego, did you have something else you wanted to report on, other related school activities quickly?
Yes. So my last one, and before I move to my last information, on my email, I will say that in order for you to get that vaccine as part of that 1B group, school employees will have to present their ID or a letter from the district saying, such and such is, I'm an employee from the district or whatever. All of our employees have staff IDs. But for the governing board, maybe I can, have a letter for you all and all of that, or you can come and take a picture ID here.
But there aren't any members of the board that are over 75, so they're not going to qualify in that. So we don't have to worry about that. Ms. Samaniego, were you going to report on the flip-flopping of the AIA in athletics?
Yes, that's my last section. Obviously, with distance learning is also obvious the issue with our sports. Douglas High School is the only school with any sports activity that had taken place during the school year. And so just a little bit to refresh your minds, we did put any athletic activity on hold prior to the winter break. If you recall, we did have a situation in football, and then a couple cases in the volleyball team. And so moving forward, we felt that at that time, it was best to put a hold on any activity. I have met with Mr. Angel Ortega, athletic director, and DHS principal Randy Walker and athletic trainer. And we've been having several meetings discussing, do we move forward? Are we ready to move forward? Obviously, AIA has made different recommendations and given us different directives. And so always leaving it up to the school board or individual school district to do as they please. So here's where we're at. I believe on Friday or Thursday of last week, we received communication from Mr. Ortega, and AIA had an emergency board meeting, and they made the decision to cancel all winter sports activities for all schools in Arizona. So, that really left no room for discussion. All athletic events are canceled for winter due to COVID. Today, yesterday, I believe, they had another emergency meeting, and that decision has been reversed. So now they are saying we can resume winter sports activities. They've pushed back some dates, provided some additional guidelines and modifications to how these sporting events can take place, from any kid participating. Let's say in a basketball game, you must wear a mask while you're playing, and no limiting any fans coming into any sporting activity. So there's different guidelines again, and pushing back competition dates, allowing for the schools to have at least 14 days of practice before any students compete with athletics. And if you recall, in one of our last board meetings, we had approved all of the seasons, sports and plans for athletics presented by Mr. Ortega, and you all approved it for the whole entire school year, allowing me and giving me guidance as a superintendent to meet with our DHS admin and confer with them and meet with them regularly as we were moving forward from season to season, or even phase to phase within a season, and allowing me to make some decisions with them, being that the whole season, the whole athletics program had been approved, but considering our COVID cases and any circumstances that arise within athletics. So that's what we decided to do. We really just thought that putting a hold on athletics for the meantime until further notice. We then had that guidance last week that all sports were canceled, but now they're reopened and we are allowed to do so. At this point, I want further direction from the governing board. There was no decision that you were going to make today on this item, or to allow me to continue working with DHS admin and saying if we can resume any sports activities.
Let's certainly stop there a minute, and we know we're not going to make a decision, but I do, so that you can have some feel for the sentiment of the board as we move forward and whatever your recommendation is going to be in the future. Members of the board, do you want to react to that? It's interesting to note that the first vote to cancel by the AIA was 5-4. The next vote to reinstate was 5-4. So you can see that there's consternation there. There's a lot of anxiety in all of those board members. But the thing that happened was they relented to the pressure, and it's very obvious. I think there was 3,800 or 38 petition was given them. The only reason I mention that is because board members ultimately were going to decide, and so. Let's just take a second for each board member to kind of respond to that, to kind of give Ms. Samaniego an idea as to what your feelings are regarding her discussions with staff, because it's going to be, you never know, the board could come back again, AIA, and all of that consternation that everybody's going through, especially our athletes and the coaches. They need to have some feel for what we're going to do and not flip-flop like the AIA did. Let's start with you, Mr. Lindeman, because I'm looking right at you. If you want to comment.
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I not muted?
You're okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I saw a comment from Dr. Miller from the Copper Queen. He says that the new cases are on the rise. We all know that. And he further states, and I quote, society will not return to normal as long as this disease is out there. And so I'm feeling that it's not appropriate to have any type of contact or any activities going on as long as this is happening. And I think it's more prudent to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gomez, I'm looking right at you now. You're right next to him. And is Dr. Gomez, how come he's only see part of his head? Does he need to sit up or? Oh, there you are. Good. Go ahead, doctor.
Okay. What I want to say is, like I said before, we got to do for Douglas what we have to do for Douglas. So but I suggest that we follow whatever the superintendent and the powers to be at the high school to decide.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Salchow?
Okay, with the AIA giving a start date, by putting off sports until we feel like it's better for our district, it becomes very difficult to schedule matches and to schedule games and activities to the point where you may have a whole sport that's practiced, most of the season, but they only get to participate one time. Phoenix started or had their start date, I want to say last week, or it was this week at least. And so that's the only thing that I have a concern about is how do we schedule when we can't work out a plan with other school districts that we are in competition with?
Thank you. Mr. Ramos? Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Ramos?
I totally agree there with Rich. This is not the time to stepping ahead and opening up our sports activities. And as Janice just said, scheduling all of this is going to be a problem. So I think we should just keep it on hold the way we have it now and wait, see, maybe next year it'll be a better situation that we can handle.
Okay, and I agree. We don't want to replicate what the AIA did. I think we're on the right track. And my major concern is, and this is what I tell parents if and when they ask, and they haven't asked lately, that if we're sacrificing all of our school activities, our academic activities, and we're delaying them and we're hindering them, and then we turn around and give a full-blown approval to athletics, I think we send the wrong message. And I know that it's a very important activity and that the students, there's a lot of them that depend on athletics to do further things, and a lot of them depend on it for school in the future. But I think it looks like we're totally indecisive when we allow athletics to continue, say, full blown and say, yes, you're going to practice, you're going to do that, even with the guidelines. And yet we tell our students and our teachers, you're not coming to school. We're sorry. We have to put a weight on what our priorities are. So I think, Ms. Samaniego, you've got a pretty good indication there on how to go. And then if you feel that you need to come back to the board, then you do that. Any further discussion on that? All right, we're going to go back to item 2, consent agenda items. That's 2A, approval of the following agenda items, payroll and expense vouchers as listed. Entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Lindeman.
Yeah, I move to approve the consent agenda items.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Ramos.
Second by Mr. Ramos. Thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mrs. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bray?
Yes, and I had a hard time recognizing Mr. Lindeman as one of the reasons I hesitated when he No, you look good, Mitch. You look good.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's a nice look.
Action 3A, discussion action on the approval of classified hires. Ms. Samaniego. Ms. Samaniego?
You're muted.
Yes, I do have one change. I am removing for this agenda item, the first bulleted name on this, and then approved. I'd like to recommend approval as presented.
Okay, that's just for further review?
Yes.
Okay, good. And, I'll entertain a motion to approve the classified hires.
Mr. Lindemann has a question.
Oh, Mr. Lindman, go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to make the motion to approve the classified hires.
Okay.
Second? Was there a second?
Yes, Dr. Ed.
Dr. Ed, thank you, Dr. Ed. All right, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Ms. Salcho?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item 3B, discussion action on the approval of athletic resignation, Mr. Bosco Salchow. And, you know, this really is a remarkable milestone. Bosco, and I can tell you that I personally, along with my dear friend Armando De Lucas, remember him and David Sharp, his friend, when they were just little guys running around everywhere, getting in everybody's way, the coaches, and always being present. And then he turns around and he comes back and he becomes probably in the history of the Douglas School the longest standing coach combined. And I think golf, there's nobody who's ever come close to him as his tenure in golf. But it's a tremendous loss to the district. Yeah, he was an outstanding teacher, and we could go on and on about him. He was involved and coached in many sports, and he's been an icon as far as coaching is concerned in the Douglas Unified School District. And I say that we approve this with all our gratitude and appreciation, and with regrets. I'll entertain a motion to do that.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Mr. Lindemann.
Yeah, I move to approve the retirement of Mr. Salchow, but I wonder if Mrs. Salchow needs to recuse.
I do. I need to recuse myself.
No, let's get a second. Can we have a second?
Okay.
Second, by Mr. Ramos.
All right, discussion. Actually, you have no personal gain, no monetary gain in this, so you
At
have
all.
to control a remote. But just for the appearance, if you want to just say that you're going to recuse yourself because you may have a conflict, that would be fine. But you've got a remote interest. But anyway, that's fine. Did you want to comment? Did you want to comment about it, Ms. Delchow?
Well, I can tell you that I'm extremely proud of him. And coaching has been a huge part of our life. In fact, I married into this coaching business. But it'll be nice to have him home too. And he's got a long list of honeydews that he's got to do. So sorry, honey. But I do recuse myself in case there's a conflict of interest.
All right. He may want to change his mind when after he heard you say that about that. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item 3C, discussion action on the approval of classified resignations and retirements. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, Mr. Bering, it's just some classified resignations and retirements, and obviously some that Mrs. Cox already mentioned as retirement. We have Elsa Villagana, our payroll specialist, who will be retiring in April. And so that's going to be a big loss for us, as well as, many of our staff that are leaving.
Did you 30 years? Yeah,
Yes, or more.
yeah, and I think she's had various other positions in the
Oh, yeah.
district before she was here. And we wish her the best as well, with regrets. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Mr. Lindeman, second.
I second.
Dr. Gomez.
Dr. Gomez, any discussion, members of the board? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos,
Yes.
Ms. Salcha,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Bering.
Yes. Item D, discussion action on the approval of classified transfer. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes, as presented, as you all know, that Selena Ibarra left our district and she had the purchasing specialist position in the business office. And Terry Dillman, who works in the business office, is currently is being recommended to be transferred into that position.
Is there any increase in salary?
Cesar, what was the increase in salary?
Yes, there is an increase in salary.
Well, that should have been there because
Yes.
the board needs to know specifically.
Mr. Bering, it's in the background information.
In the background. I was just going
Oh,
to
it
say.
is?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, great. All right, so we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
President, I move to approve.
Mr. Lindeman, second.
I second.
Dr. Gomez.
Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos,
Yes.
Ms. Salcha,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Bering.
Yes, item 3E, discussion action on the approval of increase in hours. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, and this is one of our ESS instructional aides who currently is already employed, but because of having to do some driving duties for our ESS department and children, we are asking to increase her hours to 1 hour.
Okay, and I'm looking at the back of the sheet there, and it doesn't show any increase in pay. Will there be an
No.
increase? No, there won't.
No, it's just she's moving from 7 hours to an 8-hour employee. Same salary, same hourly salary that she has.
You're going from 7 to 8 hours. They've got an increase of an hour, don't they?
Yes,
Well, there's an increase in pay.
yes,
Correct.
that's what I'm saying.
All right, I don't want to be technical,
out.
but for the record, that we're approving that increase in pay as well. All right? Okay, entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. President, I
So
move to
moved.
approve.
Mr. Lindeman, second. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. I'll second it. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos? He got frozen. Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, there's Mr. Ramos. Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Bering.
Yes. Item 3F, discussion action on the approval of volunteers. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, and these are, if you saw the information there, we have 4 student teachers completing their student teaching right now, and some of them are actually a couple of them are from our own DUSD employees. They had to resign from their IA position, so we're excited to have them almost finish their degree.
Okay, great. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
By Mr. Lindeman, second.
I second.
Is that Ms. Salcho?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos got disconnected. I have Ms. Salcha,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez.
Yes.
Okay, there he is. Mr. Bering.
Yes, I hope Mr. Ramos didn't, well, there he is.
Yes, okay.
I was going to say, I hope he didn't do that out of frustration. Item G, discussion action on the approval of donations to DUSD number 27. Ms. Samaniego?
As presented, and the donation is going to Lulu Gamo Stevenson, fourth grade teacher, at a value of $485 for science beginning circuit kits.
Very good. Entertain a motion to approve
Move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman. Second,
Second.
Ms. Salcha.
Ms. Salchow. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos? You're muted, Ms.
Ms. Salchow?
Yes.
We already have 2 ayes, right?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
I think that was Dr. Gomez said he votes yes.
Dr. Gomez and Mr. Lindeman?
And Mr. Ramos, how did you vote? Well, we have the majority votes, so the motion passes. We'll move on to item G, discussion action on waiving the requirement of a second classroom observation for the 2020-21 school year pursuant to ARS 15537. Ms. Samaniego.
Okay, and I'm going to defer this to Mrs. Cox, since it comes from HR department.
Okay.
Hi.
As presented,
Because my
these
battery
are
is
the
running.
teachers. They had their first observation, and so they have all they're all okay to waive their second.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to approve
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman. Second,
Second.
who was that? Ms. Salchow?
That was Mr. Lindeman.
No, Lindeman made the motion. Who
Okay,
made
then
the
Dr. Ed.
Dr. Ed. All right. Discussion? Roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Ramos? Mrs. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item J, discussion action as to whether or not utilize the hearing officer. Oh, excuse me, it's item I. Sorry. Discussion action on the annual approval and authorization of the board's general operations procedures. Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto. Item I, Mr. Soto.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's basically to authorize the services of for banking services, which we currently have is Wells Fargo, and we are recommending to continue using their services.
Entertain a motion to approve
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman. Second,
Second.
by Mr. Ramos. Any discussion?
Okay.
I'm here.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item J, discussion action is to whether or not to utilize the hearing officer procedure for all dismissal hearings according to 15-541. And second, to hold all student expulsion hearings before a hearing officer is selected from a list of hearing officers to be approved by the governing board pursuant to ARS 15-843. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve utilizing the hearing office.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Ramos.
Second by Mr. Ramos. Now, Ms. Samaniego, I didn't mean to bypass you, but that's pro forma. I mean, that's done every year.
Yes.
And board members,
Formality.
we want to continue doing that, all right? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos,
Yes.
Ms. Salcha,
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Bahrain.
Yes, item K, discussion action on the approval of emergency procurement purchases related to COVID-19. Ms. Samaniego, Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto.
This as presented, Mr. President, it's there's purchases that the House board approve to be treated as emergency purchases. That way we don't have to follow the procurement rules, which is getting all the quotes and stuff like that. So there are not that many at this point, but as presented.
Okay, and that specifically, the reason for that is because that's kind of the sole source, correct?
Kind of, yeah, you can say that, yes.
Okay, I
And-
mean, we're not talking about sole source, but
And if I may add, so that Mrs. Selcha understands, because we've done this before, but because we've had expenditures to do for COVID-related reasons and having to need these things under an emergency, situation, this allows us to present these items to you for approval, even though we've already purchased them, because they are considered emergency for COVID-related reasons.
very good. Do we have a motion on the floor?
No, sir.
No, okay. Discussions for future agenda items, members of the board?
You have to
We have to vote, sir. We didn't have a motion.
Oh, we have a motion, I asked you.
No, I said no.
Well, we don't, I'm sorry.
I move to approve.
Mr. Lindemann is motion.
Thank you,
Second,
Mr.
Mr.
Lindemann.
Ramos.
I'll move to approve. Second,
Mr. Ramos.
second, all right, thank you, Mr. Ramos. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos,
Yes.
Ms. Salcha,
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Bahrain.
Yes. Item 4, request for future agenda items, members of the board. None. Announcements, Ms. Samaniego.
We have Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, which means that no school and all district offices will be closed on January the 8th. And our next regular board meeting is February the 2nd.
Great. Before we adjourn, we obviously had some, and I hear a tremendous echo. We obviously have some technical problems, but I'm sure and confident that Marco and his staff will work them out. And hopefully the next time we can get this down a little bit better. And I hope that by doing this, that we're serving the community better than doing it telephonically. So by doing it this way, does anybody have any comments they want to make before we adjourn? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Lindemann.
Second.
Mr. Ramos.
Mr. Ramos. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
Thank you.